Welcome to this explainer. Today, we're tracking a massive historical paradigm shift, literally moving from selling physical, tangible stuff to creating modern, dynamic service experiences. I mean, think about the last thing you bought. Chances are you didn't just walk away with a physical object, you bought into an entire ecosystem of value. We're unpacking some fascinating research today that details exactly how the global business mindset shifted from a rigid factory focus to the intense, customer-centric service experiences we expect today. Okay, so let's dive right in by asking ourselves a really fundamental question. Why do we, as modern consumers, demand so much more than just a functional item? Think about it. If you buy a smartphone today, you're definitely not just paying for the glass and metal in your hand. No way. You're paying for the software updates, the app ecosystem, the customer support, the seamless connectivity, the whole shebang. But business wasn't always like this. To understand how we actually arrived at this modern service-driven economy, we have to look back at how people historically defined what they were selling.
And this is where things get really interesting. According to foundational literature from researchers like Rathmel back in the 1960s, a product is simply a noun. It's a static physical object, just sitting there. A service, on the other hand, is a verb. It's a dynamic action performed specifically to solve a problem for you. This distinction literally changed the game for how academics and businesses viewed the economy. Because an object is just an object, right? Until an action, a service, comes along to make it actually useful.
To really grasp this evolution, we're going to trace over 100 years of economic history across 5 pivotal eras. 1, the production era. 2, the rise of marketing. 3, the shift to services. 4, measuring invisible quality. And finally, 5, the modern service ecosystem. All right, era number 1, the production era, which was entirely firm-centric.
Back in the early 1900s, the customer basically didn't matter at all. The whole worldview was rooted in classical economics, where value was entirely tied to tangible output. Pioneers of scientific management, guys like Frederick W. Taylor, viewed quality strictly through an operational lens. In fact, Taylor believed inspection was just a justifiable action for effective quality control. To him, quality simply meant inspecting physical parts for defects at the end of an assembly line. Boom, done. There was absolutely no concept of customer satisfaction like we have today. The sole goal was maximizing production volume, using materials efficiently, and driving down those factory costs. The focus was 100% on the machine.
If we track this from mechanical cloth production in the 1870s up to 1911, when Radford formally linked inspection to quality, right into the dominance of mass production in the 1930s, the entire orientation was about the firm. Demand for these new mass-produced goods was just so insanely high that supply couldn't even keep up. Because limited product lines meant demand outpaced supply, businesses didn't really have to market anything. They just had to produce it, and people bought it.
Which brings us to era number 2, the rise of marketing, and solving the problem of surplus.
But you see, a huge awakening was on the horizon. Pure production efficiency was incredibly successful. Actually, it was almost too successful because it started creating a massive surplus of supply. Suddenly, factories are churning out more goods than people are naturally coming in to buy. By 1912, scholars like Shaw started pointing out that distribution was becoming a huge headache. But the real catalyst? The Great Depression in the 1930s. That massive societal shock, followed by all the social changes around World War II, totally flipped consumer behavior on its head. By the 1950s, companies realized they couldn't just dump products onto the market anymore. Marketing had to become a formalized discipline just to figure out how to distribute goods and solve real consumer problems.
The Great Depression and shifting social values effectively forced a massive pivot from merely making things to actively satisfying consumers. Companies suddenly woke up to the fact that consumer behavior isn't just about pure utility. The market shifted away from that rigid, centralized command and control system toward focusing on the actual functional benefits of a purchase. Making a car wasn't enough. You had to understand consumer psychology, their desires, the social values driving them to buy. Basically, marketing evolved from a minor support role into a core business strategy. Moving right along to era number 3, shift into services, where things get customer-centric. Entering the mid-20th century, we see this massive clash, an ultimate shift away from that old firm-centric worldview. The post-1950 economic boom led to a huge spike in consumer awareness. People basically stopped buying products the old way and started demanding the intangible value tied to those products. The old production orientation used to ask, hey, how can the firm make this cheapest and fastest? But the new service orientation asked, how can we satisfy the customer's intrinsic needs?
Researchers noticed that even when people bought a tangible physical good, what they really wanted were the services wrapped around it: the education, the delivery, the ongoing relationship.
And the numbers were literally impossible to ignore. By the 1960s, researchers pointed out that services were already making up 30 to 40% of total consumer expenditures. Whether it was banking, insurance, transportation, or just the services supporting physical retail, this exchange of intangibles was rapidly becoming the main engine of economic growth. Services weren't just a side hustle for manufacturing anymore, they were becoming the main event. Which leads us to a really crucial definition. Service orientation meant finally realizing that people were engaging in an exchange of intangibles. When you bought insurance, you weren't buying a piece of paper, right? You were buying a feeling of security. Paying for a telephone meant buying connection. It became super clear that true value was rooted in things like knowledge, awareness, and societal well-being. These are benefits that happen long after the initial production is finished.
Now on to era number 4, measuring invisible quality. So as the service economy just exploded, businesses hit a massive wall. How in the world do you measure the quality of something you can't even touch? You can't just inspect a haircut or a legal consultation or a flight experience at the end of an assembly line like Frederick Taylor used to do with metal parts. Researchers identified 4 unique characteristics that make services super tricky to manage. They're intangible, they're inseparable from the provider, they're perishable, you definitely can't store a missed flight in a warehouse, and perhaps most importantly, they are heterogeneous. Because human beings are involved, every single interaction between a customer and an employee is slightly different. Those old factory inspection methods, completely useless here. To crack this code in 1985, researchers Parasirman, Zatham, and Berry totally revolutionized the field with a conceptual model called ServQual. They argued that because services are intangible, quality has nothing to do with factory tolerances. Quality is simply the gap between what a customer expects before the service and what they actually experience during the delivery. If the actual experience falls short of expectations, you've got poor quality. If it exceeds them, high quality. It's that simple, but it was a total game changer. They brilliantly formalized the invisible by breaking service down into 5 measurable dimensions that companies could actually track. Tangibles, the appearance of the physical facilities. Reliability, doing what you promised accurately. Responsiveness, the willingness to actually help promptly. Assurance, the employee's knowledge and ability to inspire trust. And finally, empathy, the caring, individualized attention given to the customer. Suddenly, companies had a rigorous, scientific toolkit to track and improve the invisible experiences they were selling. And that brings us to our final era, number 5, the modern service ecosystem. As we zoom into the 21st century, the lines between products and services completely vanish. Today, cutting-edge management science operates under what's called service-dominant logic. Under this paradigm, everything, literally everything, is a service ecosystem. The whole idea of a standalone physical product is basically obsolete. Even tangible goods are now just viewed as vehicles or appliances for delivering an ongoing service. When you buy a modern car, you're not just buying metal, you're entering a complex social and economic system focused entirely on your ongoing experience, the context of your driving, and the continuous value you get while using it. The absolutely crucial takeaway here is that value isn't created in a vacuum anymore, and it definitely isn't created on a factory floor. Value is co-created. It's generated by a network of social actors, and yes, that includes you, the customer, during the actual experience. Think about it. A software platform has exactly 0 value until you, the user, log in and start interacting with it. The service provider brings the infrastructure, sure, but you bring your participation. And together, you co-create the experiential and contextual value. It's a total partnership. We have come an incredibly long way from inspecting physical parts for defects in a dusty 19th century factory. We've shifted from a firm-centric world to a profoundly customer-centric reality where value is a collaborative, ongoing experience. So, as we wrap up this explainer, I want you to look at your latest purchases, whether digital or physical, and ask yourself a question. Are you truly just buying a static product today, or are you actually paying to participate in a dynamic value co-creation ecosystem? Think about how your own participation shapes the quality of what you buy. Once you see it this way, it completely changes how you view the modern world.